The massive crystal dome of Nexus Prime sparkled under 3 different suns as alien delegates filled the Grand Assembly Hall. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy had gathered for the most important meeting of the year. Some walked on legs, others floated in energy fields, and a few slithered across the polished floor on tentacles that gleamed under the bright lights. Ambassador Velthor straightened his purple robes and smiled with all 4 of his mouths. Today was his favorite day of the entire year. Today, the Galactic Confederation would discuss the most amusing topic in their database: the silly myths and legends that primitive species believed about ancient warriors and planet destroyers. "My dear friends," Velthor announced as his voice echoed through the enormous hall, "welcome to our annual Myth Purification Assembly." Excited chatter filled the air as delegates leaned forward in their seats. Everyone loved this meeting because it made them feel so much smarter than the backward civilizations scattered throughout the Outer Rim territories. A giant holographic screen appeared above the assembly, showing blurry images of different creatures from various worlds. The first image showed tall, thin beings with blue skin and 6 arms. The second displayed short furry creatures with big eyes and sharp teeth. "These are some of the most ridiculous stories we have collected this year," Velthor continued, his voice dripping with amusement. Apparently, some species actually believe these fairy tales about ancient super warriors who could survive anything. The delegates burst into laughter. Chancellor Mordix, whose compound eyes sparkled with tears of mirth, stood up from his seat. "Oh please, Velthar, show us the best ones," he called out, wiping his eyes with a silk cloth. "I need a good laugh today." The holographic display changed to show grainy pictures of bipedal creatures with pale skin, dark hair, and only 2 arms and 2 legs. They looked so ordinary, so weak, so completely unremarkable that the entire assembly fell silent for a moment before exploding into even louder laughter. "Behold," Velthar announced dramatically, "the legendary Terrans, also known as humans." The laughter grew so loud that the crystal walls of the dome began to vibrate. Some delegates were laughing so hard they fell off their floating platforms, or collapsed onto the floor. "According to these ridiculous myths," Velthar continued when the noise died down, "these primitive creatures could breathe poison gas, survive in the frozen vacuum of space, and fight with their bare hands against armored soldiers." No, tell us more," shouted Dr. Yexani from the science sector. "What else could these magical beings supposedly do?" Velthar grinned wider. "Oh, the stories get much better. Apparently, they could heal from wounds that would kill any civilized being. They could run for days without stopping. They could eat food that would be deadly poison to us and actually get stronger from it." More images appeared on the screen, showing humans in various impossible situations, standing on worlds with crushing gravity, swimming in acid oceans, and walking through radiation fields that would melt most known species. "But wait, there's more," Velthar said, raising his hands for silence. "These myths claim that humans once had an empire that covered half the galaxy. They supposedly built ships that could move faster than light itself, and weapons that could crack planets in half like eggs." The laughter was now so intense that several delegates needed medical attention. Security guards rushed to help beings who were literally falling apart from amusement. "The most amusing part," Velthar continued, "is that these stories say the humans just disappeared one day, vanished completely, leaving no trace except these silly legends. As if beings so powerful would just give up their empire and go hide somewhere." Prime Minister Kolash stood up slowly, her tentacles waving in the air. "Surely no species could be so foolish as to believe these obvious lies," she said. "How could such weak-looking creatures accomplish anything more dangerous than farming or simple tool-making?" "Exactly my point," Velthar replied, "which is why I propose we vote today to remove all these human myths from our cultural databases. We cannot allow such obvious nonsense to contaminate the minds of our young people." The motion was passed immediately by unanimous vote. Every single delegate raised their appendages, pseudopods, or energy fields in agreement. The myths of the Terrans would be erased from all educational materials, historical records, and cultural databases throughout Confederation space. "Excellent," Velthor said, as the meeting began to wind down. "Now our children will never have to waste their time learning about these imaginary super warriors and their impossible achievements." As the delegates began filing out of the assembly hall, still chuckling about the ridiculous human myths, none of them noticed the small red light blinking on the Deep Space Monitoring Station's control panel. None of them saw the faint energy signature being detected from the direction of a small, unremarkable star system. The system was called Sol by the ancient star charts, though everyone knew it was just empty space now. Dead worlds orbiting a dying star, completely lifeless and utterly uninteresting. At least, that's what they all believed as they walked away, still laughing at the silly stories about the mythical humans who could never have existed. The red light kept blinking in the empty monitoring station, recording an energy signature unlike anything in the Confederation's databases. 3 months had passed since the Great Assembly on Nexus Prime, and life in the Galactic Confederation had returned to its normal, peaceful routine. Trade ships moved between worlds, scientists worked on their research projects, and nobody thought about silly myths anymore. Dr. Yuntel was having a very ordinary day at Deep Space Monitor Station Epsilon 7. She floated in her chair, her 6 tentacles dancing across the control panels as she checked the daily readings from sensors scattered across the galaxy. Most days, the screens showed nothing but empty space, distant stars, and the occasional meteor shower. But today was different. The first alarm started softly, just a gentle beeping sound that made Dr. Yuntel lift one of her large, round eyes from her morning report. Then a second alarm joined the first. Then a third. Within seconds, every single warning system in the station was screaming at once. "What in the 7 moons is happening?" she muttered, her tentacles flying across the controls as she tried to understand what was going wrong. The main display screen flickered and came to life, showing a map of the entire galaxy. Thousands of little red dots were blinking all across the star chart, each one representing a sensor station that was detecting something impossible. Director Kethmel came rushing into the control room, his normally perfect uniform wrinkled, and his breathing heavy from running. "Report, Doctor," he demanded, his scales changing from their usual blue color to a worried shade of purple. "Sir, I don't understand what I'm seeing," Dr. Yuntel replied, her voice shaking. "Every sensor station in the galaxy is picking up the same signal. It's coming from..." She stopped and checked her readings again. "It's coming from the Sol system." Director Kethmel's scales turned completely white. "The Sol system? But that's just empty space. Dead worlds around a dying star. Nothing has lived there for millions of years." "That's what I thought too, sir. But look at these readings." Dr. Yuntel pointed at her screen with 3 tentacles at once. "The energy signature is stronger than anything we've ever recorded. It's more powerful than our biggest space stations, more complex than our most advanced computers." The director moved closer to the screen, his compound eyes studying the strange patterns of light and energy that were dancing across the display. "Run the analysis program," he ordered. "Find out what kind of signal this is." Dr. Yuntel's tentacles moved so fast they became a blur as she fed the mysterious signal into their most powerful computer systems. The machines hummed and whirred for several minutes before producing results that made both scientists stare in shock. "Sir," Dr. Yuntel whispered, "the computer says this signal contains mathematical equations we haven't discovered yet. It has star charts that are more accurate than our best navigation systems, and..." She paused, checking the readings one more time to make sure she wasn't making a mistake. "It contains greetings written in over 10,000 different languages." 10,000 languages, Director Kethmel repeated, his voice barely audible. "That's impossible. The entire Confederation only has about 3,000 member species." "It gets worse, sir. The computer recognizes many of these languages, including 17 that went extinct before the Confederation was even formed. Languages that have been dead for thousands of years." Director Kethmel felt his legs becoming weak. He sat down heavily in the nearest chair, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. "Doctor, how much power would it take to send a signal this strong across the entire galaxy?" Dr. Yuntel checked her calculations again, hoping she had made an error. She hadn't. "Sir, to generate a signal of this magnitude would require more energy than all the Confederation worlds produce combined. Even if we took every power station, every reactor, every solar collector in our entire civilization, and linked them together, we still couldn't create something this powerful." The 2 scientists sat in stunned silence, watching as the impossible signal continued to pulse across their screens. The pattern was too complex to be natural, too organized to be random, and too powerful to be created by any known technology. "There's something else, sir," Dr. Yuntel said quietly. "The signal isn't just random noise. It's structured like a diplomatic message. It follows all the proper protocols for first contact between civilizations." First contact. Director Kethmel's scales were now shifting through colors so rapidly they looked like a rainbow. "But the Sol system is dead. There's nothing there but empty space and frozen rocks." "According to our instruments, sir, that's not true anymore. The signal is definitely coming from multiple sources within that system. Big sources. Really big sources." Director Kethmel stood up slowly, his mind reeling with the implications of what they had discovered. If someone or something in the Sol system was powerful enough to send signals across the entire galaxy, then they were dealing with a technology far beyond anything the Confederation possessed. "Doctor, I want you to seal this station immediately. No one gets in or out without my permission, and send an emergency message to Nexus Prime. Tell them we have a situation that requires immediate attention from the highest levels of government." "What should I tell them, sir? What kind of situation?" Director Kethmo looked at the pulsing signal on the screen, remembering the myths and legends that had been laughed at just 3 months ago. Myths about a powerful species called humans, who had supposedly vanished from the galaxy long ago. "Tell them," he said slowly, "that the myths might not have been myths after all. Dr. Hickson wiped the sweat from her forehead as she crawled out of the underground tunnel on Carios 7. For 3 years, her archaeological team had been digging through what they thought were simple stone ruins left behind by some forgotten, primitive civilization. The work was boring, hot, and seemed pointless most of the time, but today, everything had changed. "Professor, you need to see this right now," called her assistant, Jinho, from deep inside the excavation site. His voice echoed strangely through the tunnels. Sounding excited and frightened at the same time, Dr. Hickson grabbed her portable light and crawled back down into the narrow passage. The deeper tunnels always made her nervous because they were too perfectly smooth, too precisely carved, to have been made by primitive tools. But the university had classified this site as low priority, so she had never been given enough funding to investigate properly. When she reached the bottom chamber, she found Ginho standing in front of a wall that definitely had not been there yesterday. The wall was made of some kind of black metal that seemed to absorb light, making it difficult to see clearly. "Ginho, where did this wall come from?" she asked, running her hands across the smooth surface. "That's just it, Professor. It didn't come from anywhere. We've been digging in this exact spot for weeks, and this wall was never here before. But look at this." He pointed his light at a small panel near the center of the wall. "This started glowing about an hour ago." Dr. Hickson moved closer and saw that Jinho was right. A soft blue light was pulsing gently from what looked like a control panel built into the metal wall. Strange symbols were glowing on the panel. Symbols that looked almost familiar but not quite like any language she had ever seen. "Have you tried touching it?" she asked. "I was waiting for you, Professor, but I did scan it with our equipment. The metal isn't showing up on any of our instruments. It's like it doesn't exist, even though we can see it and touch it." Dr. Hickson carefully placed her hand on the glowing panel. The moment her skin made contact with the surface, the entire wall suddenly became transparent, like a window made of clear glass. Both scientists jumped backward in surprise, their hearts pounding with shock and fear. Professor Jinho whispered, "What is that thing?" Beyond the transparent wall was a room filled with technology that looked nothing like anything either of them had ever seen. Smooth, curved surfaces covered with gently pulsing lights extended as far as their flashlights could reach. In the center of the room stood a tall cylindrical device that was humming quietly and projecting holographic images into the air. "This is impossible," Dr. Hickson muttered. "This site is supposed to be thousands of years old. This technology looks more advanced than anything we have today." She pressed her hand against the wall again, and this time a section of it simply dissolved, creating a doorway large enough for them to walk through. The room beyond was even more amazing than it had appeared from outside. The walls were covered with screens showing star charts, mathematical equations, and images of different worlds throughout the galaxy. But what caught Dr. Hickson's attention was the holographic projector in the center of the room. "Look, Professor," Jinho said, pointing at the projection. "It's showing a person." The hologram displayed a tall bipedal figure with pale skin, dark hair, and only 2 arms and 2 legs. The figure was wearing what appeared to be some kind of uniform with symbols and markings that suggested military rank. Dr. Hickson felt her blood turn cold as she recognized the creature in the hologram. It looked exactly like the mythical humans that had been mocked and dismissed at the recent Confederation Assembly. "Jinho, start recording everything. Document every single detail." As if responding to her voice, the hologram began to move and speak. The figure looked directly at them and began talking in perfect galactic standard, the common language used throughout the Confederation. "Greetings to whoever discovers this archive," the holographic human said. "I am Captain Dong Hayan of the Terran Exploration Corps. If you are seeing this message, it means our concealment systems have detected the presence of a sufficiently advanced civilization." Dr. Hickson and Ginho stood frozen, unable to believe what they were hearing. Hologram continued, "This facility is one of thousands we have placed throughout the galaxy. We are not the primitive species your people may believe us to be. We are older than most civilizations currently active in this galaxy, and we possess technology that you would consider impossible." The projection changed, showing images of humans working in environments that should have killed any known life form. They were walking on worlds with crushing gravity, swimming in oceans of acid, and working in the frozen vacuum of space without any protective equipment. "We have withdrawn from galactic affairs to allow younger species to develop naturally, without dependence on our technology or guidance," Captain Dong Hayan explained. "The stories you may have heard about our people are not legends or myths. They are historical records, though we understand why you might find them difficult to believe." More images appeared, showing massive ships that seemed to bend space around themselves, weapons that could manipulate gravity, and cities built inside planets that had been completely hollowed out. "We have been watching your civilizations grow and learn," the hologram said. "We had hoped that when you became advanced enough to find our archives, you would prove yourselves worthy of the knowledge we have preserved for you." Dr. Hickson felt her legs becoming weak. Everything they thought they knew about galactic history was wrong. The humans were real, They were incredibly advanced, and they had been hiding among the stars for thousands of years. Jin-Ho, she whispered, contact the university immediately. Tell them to send every available team to archaeological sites throughout this sector, and contact Nexus Prime. Tell them the myths were never myths. The hologram of Captain Donghyun smiled sadly. We hope you will prove wiser than those who came before you. Fleet Admiral Zorthok was enjoying his morning meal when every alarm in the Confederation, the Defense Command, began screaming at once. His forearms fumbled with his communication device as he tried to understand what was happening while purple nutrient paste dripped from his mandibles. Admiral, you need to get to the command center immediately. His aide's voice crackled through the speaker. Something impossible is happening in the Sol system. Admiral Zorthok had been in charge of galactic defense for over 20 years. He had seen asteroid storms, rogue planets, and even the occasional stellar explosion. Nothing in space surprised him anymore. But as he rushed into the command center and saw the faces of his officers, he knew this was different. Report, he demanded, his scales darkening to their battle-ready shade of deep red. Lieutenant Commander. Hexari pointed at the massive display screen that covered one entire wall of the command center. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the Sol system. Objects are appearing that weren't there yesterday. Objects? What kind of objects? We're not sure, sir. They're huge, artificial, and they're all at once. It's like someone has been hiding an entire civilization in that system and decided to reveal themselves. Admiral Zorthok studied the screen, his military mind trying to process what he was seeing. The Sol system, which had been empty space for as long as anyone could remember, was now filled with structures that boggled the imagination. Are those artificial planets? He asked, pointing at several massive spherical objects orbiting the gas giants. Yes, sir. Each one is approximately the size of a small moon, but they're clearly manufactured. Perfect spheres covered in what appears to be cities and spaceports. And those other objects? Lieutenant Commander Hexari swallowed nervously. Sir, those appear to be shipyards. Massive construction facilities that were hidden inside what we thought were asteroid belts. And they're launching ships. The display zoomed in to show construction facilities larger than most space stations. But what made Admiral Zorthok's blood run cold was the sight of vessels emerging from these shipyards. Ships unlike anything in the Confederation's databases. How many ships? He asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. We've counted over 15,000 so far, sir, and more keep appearing. They're not like our ships at all. They move wrong. What do you mean, they move wrong? Watch this, sir. The lieutenant played back footage of one of the mysterious vessels changing direction. That ship is 3 kilometers long and massing approximately 50 million tons. It just changed course 90 degrees without slowing down, without turning, without any visible propulsion. It just moved. Admiral Zorthok felt his throat sacs constricting with fear. Physics didn't work that way. Massive objects couldn't just change direction instantly without tremendous forces tearing them apart. Sir, another officer called out, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from the largest ship in their fleet. Put it on screen. The display flickered and showed the bridge of what appeared to be a warship. But this wasn't like any bridge the Admiral had ever seen, instead of the cramped, functional spaces typical of military vessels. This looked more like a garden with control panels, growing organically from living walls. In the center of this impossible bridge stood a figure that made Admiral Zorthok's worst fears come true. It was bipedal, with pale skin and dark hair, wearing a uniform that seemed to be made of liquid light. A human. I am Admiral Jinwoo of the Terran Defense Fleet, the figure said, in perfect galactic standard. We have been monitoring your recent discussions regarding our people. You, you're real. Admiral Zorthok managed to say. Admiral Jinwoo nodded slowly. We have always been real, Admiral Zorthok. We have been patient, we have been watching. We had hoped that when younger species discovered our archives and learned of our existence, they would respond with wisdom and humility. Our archives. Yes, we have been leaving records of our civilization throughout the galaxy for millennia. Stories of our capabilities, our history, our hopes for the future. We wanted to guide younger species toward wisdom. The display split to show footage from archaeological sites across the galaxy. Human ruins were being uncovered on dozens of worlds simultaneously, each one containing technology far beyond Confederation capabilities. Instead, Admiral Jinwoo continued, his voice becoming colder. We learned that your Confederation chose to mock our legacy. You declared our history to be myths and fairy tales. You voted to erase all knowledge of our people from your databases. Admiral Zorthok realized with growing horror that the human was talking about the assembly on Nexus Prime just 3 months ago. The assembly where they had laughed at the ridiculous stories about the TERRANS. We didn't know, he whispered. You chose not to know. Admiral Jinwoo corrected. You preferred to believe you were the most advanced species in the galaxy, rather than consider that others might have walked among the stars before your civilizations were even born. The display showed the human fleet moving with impossible coordination. Thousands of ships that should have taken hours to change formation were adjusting their positions instantly, as if they were all controlled by a single mind. "What do you want from us?" Admiral Zorthok asked. Admiral Jinwoo's expression showed disappointment rather than anger. "We want you to learn, Admiral. We want you to grow beyond your arrogance and become worthy of the galaxy you inhabit." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Zorthok staring at a screen full of impossible ships moving toward Confederation space with the patience of teachers and the power of gods. The human fleet arrived at Nexus Prime like a perfectly choreographed dance. Thousands of impossible ships moved through space as if they were swimming through water. Instead of traveling through the deadly vacuum between stars, they took positions around the capital world with movements so smooth and graceful that watching them felt like observing a beautiful work of art. Ambassador Velthor pressed his face against the observation window of the council chambers, his hearts beating so fast he thought they might burst. 3 months ago, he had stood in this very room making jokes about mythical humans and their ridiculous legends. Now those same mythical beings were surrounding his world with technology that made the Confederation's best warships look like children's toys. "They're not firing," whispered Chancellor Mordix, his compound eyes reflecting the light from the human ships. "Why aren't they attacking?" "Maybe they don't want to destroy us," replied Dr. Yixani, though her voice shook with uncertainty. "Maybe they want something else." The central holographic projector in the council chambers suddenly activated without anyone touching the controls. The image that appeared made every delegate in the room freeze with shock and recognition. A human woman materialized in the center of the chamber, her presence so commanding that the enormous room fell completely silent. She wore a uniform that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, and her calm expression carried the weight of countless years of wisdom and experience. "Honorable members of the Galactic Confederation," she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast space. "I am Admiral Hyjin of the Terran Defense Fleet. I speak for humanity, the species you deemed mythical, primitive, and extinct." Ambassador Velthor felt his legs turn to liquid. He gripped the railing in front of him to keep from collapsing as the reality of his situation crashed down upon him like a falling mountain. Double quotes. "How? How is this possible?" Chancellor Mordix managed to stammer. Admiral Hyjin turned to face him, her dark eyes seeming to look directly into his soul. "We are an old species, Chancellor, far older than any civilization currently represented in this chamber. We were exploring the stars when your ancestors were still learning to make fire." The holographic display around her changed, showing images of human achievements throughout galactic history. Ancient cities on worlds that had been considered uninhabitable. Massive engineering projects that had shaped entire solar systems, scientific discoveries that had laid the foundation for technologies the Confederation used every day. "We watched your civilizations grow from primitive tribes into spacefaring peoples," Admiral Hyjin continued. "We guided you when necessary, protected you from dangers you never knew existed, and celebrated your achievements as if they were our own children taking their first steps. But why did you hide?" Dr. Yixani asked, her voice barely audible. "Because we learned long ago that when an advanced species reveals itself to younger civilizations, those civilizations stop growing. They become dependent, like children, who never learn to walk because they are always carried." The images changed again, showing human ships quietly helping during natural disasters, human scientists sharing discoveries through anonymous channels, and human diplomats secretly preventing wars between developing species. "We chose to withdraw from direct contact so you could develop your own strength, your own wisdom, your own unique contributions to the galaxy," Admiral Hyjin explained. "But we never truly left. We have been watching, waiting, hoping. For what?" Ambassador Velthor asked, his voice cracking with shame and fear. "Hoping that when you became advanced enough to discover our archives and learn of our existence, you would respond with wisdom and humility. Hoping that you would see the stories of our people, not as threats to your pride, but as inspiration for what you might become." The silence in the chamber was so complete that the only sound was the gentle humming of the life support systems. Every delegate understood what was coming next. Instead, Admiral Hyjin said sadly, "You chose mockery. You found it more comfortable to believe these stories were fairy tales rather than accept that others had achieved what you had not. You preferred to laugh at legends rather than learn from them." The human fleet outside began to glow with an energy that made the planet's 3 suns look dim by comparison. Weapons that could crack worlds charged with casual ease. Yet Admiral Hyjin's next words were spoken with infinite sadness rather than anger. "We offer you a choice, people of the Confederation. Accept guidance from those who have walked among the stars since before your sons were born, and learn what true civilization means. Learn to be worthy of the incredible gift that is consciousness in an infinite universe." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "Or continue in your arrogance and ignorance while we reclaim our role as guardians of this galaxy." The threat was clear, but it was delivered with the gentle patience of a parent correcting a beloved child rather than the anger of a conqueror. Ambassador Velthor looked around the chamber at his fellow delegates. He saw fear in their eyes, but also something else: shame. Deep, burning shame for their behavior just 3 months ago. Slowly, with great effort, Ambassador Velthor stood up from his seat. His legs shook as he walked to the center of the chamber and knelt before the holographic projection of Admiral Hygen. "Forgive us," he whispered, his voice breaking. "We were fools. We were arrogant children who thought we knew everything. Please, teach us to be better." One by one, every other delegate in the chamber followed his example. Chancellor Mordix, Dr. Yeksani, Prime Minister Kalesh, all of them knelt before the human admiral, their pride finally broken by the weight of their own ignorance. Admiral Hyjin smiled for the first time since her arrival, and in that smile was the promise of wisdom, growth, and a future brighter than any of them had dared to imagine. Outside, the stars themselves seemed to pulse with approval as humanity officially returned to guide their younger siblings among the stars.